Hi, I'm Jessie here for Nerd Out. I'm here with Mercedes Bryce Morgan, who is the director of Stargate Origins, a new series that brought back Stargate after a long time off the air. Today, what I wanted to talk about with you and have a conversation about was queer representation in science fiction. Because obviously, and spoiler alert for those who haven't seen Stargate Origins, there's a queer character in Stargate Origins. And then also this year, we just got Star Trek, which just had its first gay lead characters.
Yeah, I think that queer representation in science fiction is especially important because science fiction is imagining the way the world will be. And so I feel like if we don't see queer characters in sci-fi, it's saying like, yeah, in the future this is no longer a thing, and this is like what we're aiming for is more representation. And so that's why, like, out of any genre, I think it's really, really important. And also just because sci-fi is the most expensive genre. And so, like, really, like, if you look at a lot of indies, people aren't afraid to have queer storylines because they're like, oh, a lot of money isn't at stake and it's not going to be seen all around the world. But if we put these in really big franchises, we'll show, like, with Black Panther, it's like, yes, this is something that is going to make a lot of money. Because this is what people want to see, and people all around the world will be exposed to it, except for, like, instead of just a really small group.
With Stargate, it has had a 20-year history. Star Trek has had a 50-year history. Marvel has had a ton of movies, and they still haven't had an overtly queer character. So it's exciting to see these queer characters being brought into these franchises, but it's also brought into relief the fact that they've been absent for so long in these long-running franchises.
For sure.
Can you talk about that? And is it exciting, disappointing when you hear that?
It's exciting because it's now a possibility, but it's disappointing that it hasn't been done yet. And it's still a possibility, but it's not happening quite yet as like the lead character. There's a lot of scripts that'll go into meetings and pitch that has a queer main character, and it's really hard because I don't know. In certain cases, it's like, oh, did they not pick this because the story isn't right for them? Or is it because as a queer character? And so, like, you always have to question that, like, okay, is it just, like, the content itself, or are people closed-minded? And it's a hard enough industry as it is. And so just add that on top of it is just a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Not sci-fi, but Beauty and the Beast is a great example of everyone's like, oh my God, there's a queer character. And then everyone made such a big deal of it, and all these people boycotted the movie. And then I was like, if no one would have said anything, I wouldn't have even known.
Yeah, it's such
that there was a gay character in this.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so it's like people are making, a big deal of it, but it needs to be made even bigger. And who cares if people make a bigger deal of it?
You're a queer filmmaker, and you pushed for a queer character in Stargate.
Yeah.
Star Trek has queer creators, and they pushed for queer characters in their show. So it's awesome seeing that diversity behind the camera leads to diversity in front of the camera, which is great.
Yeah.
But I also am curious of your thoughts on, like, why is it queer people and people of color's job to be the ones to push for diversity?
That's a great question. I'll always find that when I'm in the room, people will think about things that they didn't think about before. Like, I've been in so many writers' rooms where I'm like, you guys, we don't have any women characters that aren't, like, a sex object, or, like, we don't have any queer characters. And I don't think it's that people maliciously try not to do that because they're anti that. I think it just doesn't enter their brains at all, and they're just not conscious of it. And so I think it's really important for people like us just to be there, just to, like, politely be like, hey, did you think of this? Like, this is pretty necessary. And then people realize that. And so that's why I think it's important that we just have more queer filmmakers, because it just, like, raises awareness. But then on the flip side too, we've seen a lot of big blockbusters recently, like Mad Max has awesome characters, and Shape of Water, has a lot of women, but then there's still not a lot of women filmmakers. So then there's also the flip side, that it's become this very profitable thing because that's what's in right now, but we still don't see, women making that. And so I think it's, like, on both sides finding a medium.
Exactly, and trying to make it sure it's not just a fad. Like,
exactly.
It's not like superhero films. Like, no, these are people who have a right to have their voices
terrifying.
heard. Exactly. Yeah. What type of queer representation in science fiction would you like to see? Like a badass warrior woman, or like very, like, stereotypical gay man in the lead of a franchise?
I'd like to see both. I'd like to see it all. I just think that's more interesting, and I think it's also just interesting to see, like, fluid characters, where like, especially because it's like in sci-fi and in these big genre pieces, is it's usually, you know, the story is first and huge, and then we have this character that fills out the story, because when you pitch a sci-fi, one log line is the world and the other log line is what the characters are going through. And so I think with these queer characters, it's like they just happen to be fluid, and it's not even something that's what the story is about. It's just another facet of their personality. And so that's what I really want to see, is like when it's so normalized that people don't even call it out anymore, because it's just another characteristic.
Awesome. I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. That was Mercedes Bryce Morgan, and go check out Stargate Origins. It's awesome. I absolutely adore it, and thank you so much for being here.
Awesome, thanks.